Those were some really good waffles. I really needed that considering the frustration of the last top 10. I even tried to offer some to Alex, but well, he was busy, recovering. But now that we've dealt with the worst, it's time to talk about the best. So here is my top 10 best games of 2017. Let's get started. Number 10. Super Lucky's Tale, Hat in Time, and Skylar and Pluck's Adventure on Clover Island. Wow, we're literally starting things off with a three-way tie. And there's a reason for that, actually. People might remember that Yooka-Laylee, of all games, ended up on my disappointing games of 2017. One of the reasons that it did was because even though it was a good romp, and I did give a good score, and I stand by it, there were some problems in the fact that it didn't push beyond the usual Banjo-Kazooie formula. I get that Playtonic was getting together after a few years, and that is a bit of a transition period, but at the same time, it was disappointing when you had all of these other platformers, which were technically shorter and from smaller teams, doing so much more to their formulas than Yooka-Laylee did. And that's why they all earned this number 10 spot. Where they all lacked in one particular area, they excelled in other areas, and that's the sign of a good up-and-coming franchise. Either they had compelling characters and stories to be able to tell, in some cases, stories for the individual worlds that you walked into, or they enhanced the gameplay of what was inspiring it. So overall, you got an increase in overall product worth, instead of just adhering to a regular run-of-the-mill formula that we've seen who knows how many times. And that's why it's a three-way tie for the number 10 spot. Number 9. Thimbleweed Park. You know, walking into Thimbleweed Park this year, I didn't know actually what to expect. Was Ron Gilbert able to do an adventure game based on the classic format he was used to so many years ago? But I'm happy to say that it doesn't really matter. He hasn't really lost any of his touch, and this is a good game for any audience. Its story was compelling. Its gameplay, though nostalgic, is easy enough to get into for both old and new adventure gamers alike. Its cast, even though it's fairly unknown, is well done in the roles that they are all portrayed in. I really didn't have too many bad things to say about this game. I'm so glad that it ended up being as good as it is. In fact, being an award-winning game, I know that Thimbleweed Park, as of this top 10, has taken a lot of awards up until this point. So congratulations, Ron Gilbert. You still got the touch, and I look forward to your next project in the near future. Hopefully. Number 8. Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. You know, it's funny that so many people take the negative that came out of my review and keep that as the spotlight on my review of Breath of the Wild, but there's a reason that this is on my best list. For everything that I didn't appreciate about it, and yes, there were a few, there's so much more that I actually do appreciate about the game that I think could have been improved with the other things I mentioned. I only mention them because any good game can always be better. And in this case, while I don't like the structure of the shrines and feel like they should be parts of dungeons, there actually were some really enjoyable shrines to be able to go through, real puzzles to be able to solve, and give you an incredible feeling of accomplishment when you do so. For every moment when I really wish there was a full-on voice cast for this game, the beauty of its graphics kind of outweigh that and almost make me wonder, should this have gone the classic route and not even had a single voice actor for it? There's so much more that I could go into, and obviously I kind of put a limit on what I can talk about in these videos, but I just want to point this out here that even though this is so low on the list, that's not a knock against Legend of Zelda. I think that it's still a good game. I think that the turn towards open world was an overall good decision for Nintendo. It's just 2017 was full of a lot of great games, and unfortunately, these other great games that are before this one, before Legend of Zelda, just kind of hit a little bit harder than Zelda did. But don't take this as me knocking Zelda. I still love and appreciate it, and I want to beat it. I even got the Champion's Ballad amiibos, and I'm looking forward to doing all of that content. It's just, unfortunately, the other games that came out this year had so much more shock factor to them than Zelda did. Number 7. Rime. While this is still a personal regret for me that I never got my review out in time to be able to help this game out, I am so glad that it still was able to get some awards out of the process. It was able to make its way to other mediums, and overall, a lot of people that I've been able to talk to have been able to play this game and enjoy it as much as I did. This is one of those games that I'm very happy to say is on this list, and I'm very proud that I was able to play it. Does it suck that I didn't give it its proper due when it came out? Yes. But I'm hoping that this makes up for it, and also the review that I gave. Rime is an amazing experience, from gameplay, from story, from audio. The list goes on and on. And even though it's more of an artsy indie game and therefore doesn't cater to a lot of the mainstream or casual crowd, I still think that there's something that you can get out of this regardless of what kind of a gamer you are. There's a story to be told here that will tug at your heartstrings. It will actually be able to help you relate to it. And to this day, it still makes me cry. And I've played through this about 2 or 3 times by now. Thank you so much to Tequila Works for making this amazing piece of artwork and showing that gaming can go beyond just being an interactive experience. Number 6. Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces.
But Drak, how can you pair these 2 games together? Because modern gaming culture is supposed to teach you that you're supposed to like one of them for its nostalgic value and hate the other one because it's just another crappy 3D Sonic game.
Is that what you guys want me to say? Because I stand by the scores that I gave for both Mania as well as Sonic Forces. And in fact, when I looked at these 2 games together, there was one thing I started to notice when I put them into this list, or even moved them over to the disappointing list. Yes, I tried doing that. It didn't work. There was actually a lot to enjoy here. And the other problem that I had was that, well, they kind of pair together in a weird way. Where one fails, the other succeeds. Where one has a worse element, that element is improved on in the other game. And I know that these things weren't worked together, like the teams were not working side by side on them. I know Christian Whitehead was working on Mania and Sonic Team was working on Forces, but for some weird reason, it's like their brains were aligned, and where one was failing or at least not matching up to par, the other one makes up for. And so it's a weird pairing, yes, I'll give you. But when you look at overall the whole and the fact that the stories are connected, it does overall work in a really weird way. And maybe it's just me, but again, this is my list. Number 5. Cuphead. Wow, this game was totally worth it in the long run and well worth the wait. I didn't think this game was going to be as good as it was until I actually sat down and played it. I love what they've done to the Contra formula and even to the shoot 'em up formula as a whole. Considering how much effort and time and love went into the animation, I'm so glad that they took their time and they made it work the best way they could. And even though it's as frustrating can be, I still occasionally find myself picking up an old level that maybe I've completed and just running through it one more time. Just running through that boss just to see if I can do it just that much faster. And I don't know if we're actually going to see Cuphead 2. I know that this game did well, but I don't know if the developers want to kill themselves to get another sequel or to get a sequel out. But man, I would love one. I would love additional bosses, even if it's just minor DLC. This game would be just as enjoyable. And I still find, like I said, I still find myself picking up just a boss that I've killed and enjoying going through the process again. And maybe even trying to get killed even less. Overall, if you haven't picked this game up, it's still hard as crap, but it's worth a shot. Number 4. Super Mario Odyssey. Holy freaking nostalgia, guys. I know what I've said about the platformers at the number 10 spot, but if there was a pinnacle platformer that came out this year, it would have to be from Nintendo. And this is the first time I'm happy to say that where I'm mostly a Zelda fan, a Metroid fan, I haven't really been what I would consider to be a Mario fan in many years. This has been an enjoyable experience, so much so that I'm still addicted to it. I'm still going and getting the moons. I never do this in collectathon games. I'm always done and out and ready to go to the next game as quickly as I possibly can. This game, not so much. I'm having so much fun just going and finding these minor moons everywhere in every single world that I can get my hands on. And it's still as enjoyable as when I first picked it up when I did the Drak tries. This is definitely a Mario game that is going to stay with me for a long, long time. I cannot wait to get this in my daughter's hands. And yeah, it's the perfect formula where Yooka-Laylee had problems with its formula, where the other three were able to excel in it, but still had their own issues. This is the most perfect platform game that came out this year. And you all know, to me, it's very hard for a game to be rated as perfect. Its story was right in line with a Mario story. Its visuals were right in line. Its gameplay's fusion of 3D World as well as Mario Galaxy just makes this game so much more tasty to be able to get your hands into, even if it's just for 10 to 30 minutes. It's enjoyable for every person of every age, of every creed. And I'm so glad that I'm actually a Mario fan again, instead of just being the default Zelda, Metroid, and all that other stuff fan. Number 3. Resident Evil 7. Holy crap, survival horror is back, and it is giving me post-traumatic stress disorder. This game is such a return to formula that it is amazing. And even though it's disgusting, it's such a tasty treat to go through. I can't believe the words that I'm saying. We've had so many Resident Evil action games that I was thoroughly convinced that was the formula and everybody just had to get used to it, or Capcom was going to have to put Resident Evil on the shelf. And what we got in return was totally unexpected. A story that's actually pretty engaging, but feels separate from the overall Resident Evil canon. It's an isolated incident, almost like the original game. The gameplay bringing back so many of the beloved puzzle elements that I love from each and every game that came before this, minus the action ones. This game is just so good and yet so disgusting, and I can't believe the words that I'm saying, but I had to put this sigh on the list. This is such a return to form. This is such a wonderful experience to be able to go through, even if it scares the crap out of you and makes you regret your life decisions. It's still well worth it, and I applaud Capcom for bringing survival horror back to its roots. Number 2. Metroid: Samus Returns. So I want to clarify something really quick before we go into the reasons for number 2. Even though this is the number 2 spot, this is literally the game that I have replayed the most in 2017. Yes, it beat Zelda. Yes, it beat Mario. Yes, it beat Sonic. It beat all of them, even Cuphead. I have replayed this who knows how many times. I still enjoy Samus Returns. Although this technically violates my no remastered rule, I felt like it was worthwhile to break it this one time, because overall, this is a different game compared to the original Metroid Return of Samus. This is a game that is reconstructed just as much as Metroid Zero Mission was for the original Metroid. So in essence, I don't know if you can actually call it a remaster. It is a reboot from the ground up, and it plays magnificently. It adds elements that I am so happy got added, and I look forward to them being in Metroid Prime 4. And if they're not, Nintendo, you should be ashamed. I love the fact that we still maintained continuity and had my favorite of the suits, which is the infamous Other M suit. I love the visuals of SR388, as well as 3D renditions for all of the evolutions of Metroids. And I cannot begin to speak to the additions that were added for this game. While Return of Samus had a very simplistic story that dealt solely with Metroids, they decided to expand on it further and even go into the Chozo ruins that are supposed to be on SR388, including adding 2 bosses that are amazing experiences to be able to go through in and of themselves. They solely, to me, justify playing Samus Returns. I am so happy to put this on as number 2, and I look forward to my next of many playthroughs of Samus Returns. Now, before we get to number 1, we do have a few honorable mentions, so let's go ahead and hit those first. Our first honorable mention goes to Knack 2, that even though it didn't make the actual list, it still is a worthwhile platformer and is a perfect example of what a second entry should be of any game series, and I had to at least give it some kind of recognition on this list. Knack was a good game. This is a better game that improves on the strengths of the original. My second mention goes to Guardians of the Galaxy Season 1. I'm not usually the biggest fan of the episodic ones. There are a few isolated entries that come to mind when I think of good ones, but this was one I was actually worried about because Telltale was going to be taking on a Marvel property. And wow, I didn't need to worry at all. This story was amazing to go through. I'm actually on my second playthrough and basically siding with other Guardians within the group. And I'm still enjoying every second that I can get my hands on this. So I had to at least give this an acknowledgement, as this is kind of more of an example of a modern adventure game. And my last honorable mention is to Candleman. I cannot think of a game that was on my top 10 list longer than Candleman. Hell, I actually tried in some weird way to tie this with Rime in my head, because both are artistic platformers that take us beyond an interactive experience, but more into an emotional experience. But then I started having problems the deeper I went into Rime, is that overall Rime is better than Candleman. That's not knocking the developers of Candleman. I still enjoy it, and I enjoyed going through this again just to get additional footage for this top 10 list. I enjoy this game, and I look forward to what the developer gives me next, but I have to acknowledge that Rime was an overall better game in terms of its story and what it was trying to accomplish compared to Candleman. And with that, it's time to get to number 1.
Oh, Mother, this child needs a name by which to know her, that your love may warm her life as the rising sun warms all the earth. Speak her name!
Aloy!
Horizon Zero Dawn. Even though this game has not been as replayed as everything else on this list, it still deserves this accomplishment. Horizon Zero Dawn, to me, is a masterpiece. Horizon Zero Dawn, to me, is the perfect new IP to be able to come out in a long time. I know that a lot of naysayers were mad at my giving it a perfect 10, but this game spoke to me far more than most games that came out this year. The only one that rivaled was probably Samus Returns, and this one squeaked through. Its story is beautiful. It's brought me to tears who knows how many times. I'm actually replaying it so I can go into the Frozen Wilds DLC. Its visuals were stunning. I'm not usually a lover of certain landscapes in a world, but this got me invested in looking at them. In particular, I don't really like winter or desert landscapes. I live in the desert. I deal with winter, and I don't necessarily like them, but this game got me to like them. I love the gameplay elements. I will admit that there are some flaws to it. No game is truly perfect, but this game played proper to me, and I look forward to getting into the Frozen Wilds DLC as soon as I get there. I'm just doing a replay because I want to see more different decisions in the playthrough. Its audio is gorgeous, and I still applaud Ashley Birch for her performance as Aloy, as well as being able to play the other character that Aloy is associated with. I'm not going to spoil it too much because, again, this is a game I want to get in people's hands. And I'm also just going to give an overall thank you, and you did a great job to Guerrilla Games. Holy crap. A game company that I thoroughly thought was never going to step outside of the first-person shooter genre. It had to be the Halo for PlayStation, and you guys delivered a gem, an absolute diamond, and I look forward to seeing where Horizon Zero Dawn goes next, if it even goes anywhere. Thank you, Guerrilla Games, for stepping outside your proverbial box and bringing us into a whole new world of possibilities. Well, my friends, this marks the end of 2017 and my overall thoughts on it. Overall, it was a really great year for games, and I look forward to the next year for the games that might be coming out next. But first of all, before I end this, I wanted to thank you all for your love, for your kindness, for your patience, and for continuing to making my community as great and as awesome as it is today. I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. And I wish you all nothing but the best. Here's to a happy 2018 for all, and here's hoping that things go at least a little bit more smoothly than they did last year. What, you thought I was going to drink this thing? Heck no. Hell, I'm still on the clock. We'll see you guys next time for the first video of 2018.